Let's move on and talk about what's been a big talking point here in South Africa today. The country's biggest union federation, COSATU, on strike, it says, because it's unhappy about a number of things. It's also being joined by other union federations, FEDUSA, NACTU, and I think I saw SAFTU is joining this conversation, so we can add all the other twos if you like. There are a host of things that I'm unhappy about. Let's chat about some of those issues. Hugo Pienaar is Director at the Employment Practice at Cliff Decker Hoffman. He joins us for this conversation. Thanks for joining us, Hugo. I don't know whether I am alone in doubting, I'm sorry to use the word, the sanity of the unions. We've just lost 2.2 million jobs between the first and the second quarter of the year. The outlook for South Africa's economy is bleak, and many companies are on the edge of collapse. The unions are saying, give back our labor for one day so that we send a message to the government. Is that rational?
I can't agree with you more, Godfrey, and that is exactly the concern. The legislative framework is there for socio-economic action. And the interesting point is, of course, where this started at NETLAC was really just about public transport. None of these other issues were considered or put before NETLAC. Be that as it may, we now have this whole array of demands, mostly directed at government, of course, and COSATU is part of that. And then we have the poor worker on the other side, including companies or the employers, major losses of loss of work, retrenchments, a loss of income to the majority of our workers. And remember, our workers in most cases support at least 10 dependents. And so there's a huge effect of them not having an income, not only for the period of the COVID-19, but also for today. And the question is, of course, if COSATU is unhappy they're part of the alliance, why must the workers suffer the consequence? And I think if we had a democratized workforce where they could vote in favor or against this sort of action, we would have seen a different result. But unfortunately, we do not have that. So yeah, I share your concern. The background just simply can't justify it. It can't be conducive letting our workers suffer more in the current climate for the demands or the issues raised by the union federations.
So what is the purpose of today's protest, do you think? Are we getting caught up in politics here within the alliance, plus also the workers themselves, or do the unions feel compelled to recognize a day that's being recognized around the world? Never mind the consequences.
Yeah, well, the question is, are workers being caught up? Do they really know what the issues are about? We've seen placards at companies about personal concerns of workers against the employer. They have no clue what this is about. So sadly, I think the workers are simply strung along and used as a tool to deal with other motives. And as I've said, I appreciate the provisions in the Act and the rights of people. The question is, why should workers suffer? Because we must remember, Godfrey, that so workers that will go without pay for today, the people who organize this will not lose any pay because of today's actions. And I'm not saying that's not part of the process, but that is a question that workers will be wondering about. Why must I continue to suffer, having suffered 3 or 4 months of lockdown?
And I mean, Hugo, as concerning as it is, do you think that the unions are using this type of action because that is the only type of action that the government responds to?
Yeah, and it's often the question that people ask is not this type of action, but sometimes it's only response to violent conduct. And then the question is, why do people resort to violence? Can't ever condone that, but that question is asked. And this is one of the mechanisms, but of course COSATU is part of government. They should be able to change from within and use those tools, and that might be more effective. I don't think taking workers out today is conducive to the issues at play, because if you look at it, it's about protective clothing, it's about corruption in government, it's about continued cartel conduct, it's about government or politicians doing business with the state. You know, what will the suffer of the workers do today to address or ameliorate those demands?
But I mean, also, we have seen arrests over the past week and a half in terms of corruption, which is one of the issues that the unions are striking over. Do you not think that, the unions see the progress that the government is making in terms of that?
Well, one would have hoped that they would see that. Of course, they can rightly ask why after so many years, and, making an arrest is just the first part. The solution would lie in the conviction or not. That is the test. But surely that should be appreciated. The other concerns we've seen that in the public domain for a long, long time. But I remain of the view that I'm not sure taking workers out on strike, damaging the economy, damaging employers' opportunity to create more jobs, is at all conducive, the strike action conducive to addressing that?
Absolutely. It's one of those puzzles, I think, for many of us, perhaps who are not within the union world, will struggle to understand. Because these are the same people who want an increase. They're going to be demanding bonuses next. And I'm reminded of a certain company, I don't know if you remember it, Hugo, it's called South African Airways. Last year, this time, they were demanding pay increases. They wanted bonuses. This year, this time, the gates are locked. Lessons not learned.
Godfrey, we still see strikes today.
Yeah.
And during the coming week, about wage increases where employers offered 5% and unions are taking their members out on strike for 8% wage increase.
Absolutely.
Like you say, it just doesn't make sense.
Boggles the mind. Hugo Pienaar, Director at the Employment Practice at Clive Decker Hofmeyr. Thanks for joining us. Breaking